G'day and welcome back to the convoluted nightmare that we have come to know as the chicken truck. Today we're going to be getting this mess of different shapes kind of sorted out. You can see there's big gaps here, and just everything's just kind of loosely in place, so I want to do something to get this tied together a little better. Before we do that though, I just kind of forgot that this whole roof is only kind of held on with a couple tack welds up front here. There's like one here, and literally that's it. And man, I really butchered this thing up. So we're gonna get a couple more tack welds in here just to keep things I guess where they should be. So when I'm tack welding something like this post, all I do is to just put a tack weld like on all the edges. So here, and then down here on the edges. And then same on the outside, just on the edges of all the structure. So now this post is good and strong. It's not going to move around on us. However, if for some reason we have to reposition something, it's a lot easier to cut apart a tack weld than it is to cut apart a fully welded seam. So for now, we're just leaving it tacked. But now the risk of this moving around has kind of gone away on us. In theory, everything's where it should be, so we don't want to keep having to reposition it now. For the filler piece here, I'm just using this piece, like so, which we cut out of here. So that'll go there. So by now it's probably become apparent that I've decided to do this the hack way and build this out of multiple pieces of garbage welded together instead of just fabricating a brand new piece that fits in there. I just want to go on camera here for the record and say this is absolutely not the right way to do this. It is not faster, it is not better, it is not easier. Why are we doing it this way then, you ask? Short answer is I'm an idiot. I guess other answer would be sometimes I find for whatever reason it's fun to do everything the wrong way and then just see what kind of result you get at the end. It's also back in the day when, you know, they were just kind of learning to do customs and they were just starting to customize cars. That's the way they were often done, is they were just pieced together from multiple things welded together. There was lots of relief cuts and lots of welding and whatever. And, you know, by today's standards, that stuff looks pretty crude. But back in the day, that was just, you know, they were using what they had, and there's no set book on how to do anything. They were just figuring it out as they went. So I find it's sometimes kind of rewarding or interesting, I guess, to do things the old school way. I get a better, I guess, appreciation of the old custom cars and the old body men and the work that they did back then. You know, it's easy to look at things from a modern perspective where everybody has like a cheap English wheel in their garage. They got cheap sugar stretchers and they can build all these panels. But I don't know, it's just in a twisted kind of way. It's kind of fun to do it the old-fashioned way and do it the hard way and do it the stupid way, do it the wrong way, whatever you want to call it. I'm not endorsing building things out of multiple pieces and welding them together like that. It's just not the right. It's not a good way to do it, but it is. It'll get the job done, I guess, for better or for worse. What we got here is like everything you don't want to see. A lot of various things that weren't done properly here. We had poor fit up over here, big gap here, and then just the fact that this is like 200 different pieces welded together when it only had to be really one piece that we should have just built and welded in, but we didn't. So now we got to live with our mistakes. Surprisingly, for the amount of welding that's gone into this, it did stay reasonably straight. But you can see right at this junction here, not really too surprising. We've got the old mountain of sorrow. All the heat's kind of piled up and stressed this area out. And then back over here, we've got like Grand Central Station in Idiot Town. Just all these different welds coming together, and you can see what's happened here is this is all kind of turned into the Valley of Shame. It's really dipped in there. Holy, look at that. Wow. So what we're gonna try to do now is actually try to hammer this out and make it look like something. Good luck with that, you stupid idiot. gonna try to explain some of what we're doing here in the most convoluted way I know how. So what we're doing here is obviously we're welding two pieces of metal together. So if we pretend these are two pieces of metal that we're welding and we're looking at it from the side, and we're going to be adding our weld in here. And what's happening is as we're welding this, these pieces are going to pull apart slightly. So it's going to slightly expand, and then as it cools, it's actually going to pull together, and it's going to pull together more than it expands. And so therefore this area where it's been welded is actually shrinking, and as soon as it shrinks, well, this doesn't have anywhere to go. So what you'll see is it either pulls up and it creates a big kind of mountain, or it's going to pull down. It's just going to take the path of least resistance, but it doesn't matter if it goes up or down. It is shrunk here. This is where it kind of throws a lot of people off, because as it shrinks and pulls together, it's going to be pulling all of the surrounding metal in around it. You'll see this in the footage here when I start hammer and dollying and planishing the weld back flat again, stretching it back flat. Is you'll see when I first started right around Grand Central Station in Shame Valley here, there's a noticeable oil can where it's popping in and out over here. But as you see me work the panel and stretch the weld back out, this oil can disappears and this area tightens back up. So that's kind of where it throws people off, is it creates a false stretch. But the problem is there's not enough metal here now, so it's trying to come from somewhere, and it's creating that oil can elsewhere in the panel. So what you're seeing me doing here in the video is I'm stretching out the weld area again. By doing that, all I'm doing is I'm just taking a curved dolly of slightly more crown than whatever panel I'm trying to shape, and then I'm just taking my hammer or slapper or whatever, it doesn't really matter, and I'm just squashing that weld in between the hammer and the dolly. And when I'm doing that, you'll hear this sound, kind of that ringing sound, which means it's hammer on dolly, and that means we're squishing that weld back flat again. challenge we have here is that we're not just trying to stretch out our welds and get that recontoured. We're actually having to reshape this roof as well in the process, because if we look at any car body, it doesn't matter if it's an old vehicle like this or like a modern car with a lot of flat panels. Every panel on a car is a crowned shape. It has curves in both directions, and all of these shapes, they only fit together one way. You know, as soon as you start trying to cut and weld and add and subtract or whatever, that shape has been destroyed. So we'll just pretend like our circle here, because the circle is kind of the easiest way to explain this. Well, we'll pretend this is like the panel on a car or one of the shapes on a car. So this is all, it's round, it's a perfect circle. You know, it looks proper. However, if we take this circle and we go and cut it in half, and then we splice in a chunk of metal or filler piece or whatever you want to call it, well, now it's no longer a circle. Like, what the hell kind of shape is that? So you can see now, if we look at this, you know, now we got kind of some kind of weird transition going on here. You know, nothing really looks right. And this is exactly what's happening with this roof, or what happens anytime you cut something up and add or subtract from it, is the shape has now been changed. The entire shape is no longer what it was, so it doesn't look right anymore. In the case of this roof on the truck, we've gone and we've widened, you know, this rear section. We widened it like 3/4 of an inch. And we've also gone and we've added a filler strip here as well, plus the filler strip here, plus, you know, a piece here. So what you're gonna see in the video here is I'm doing a lot of, you know, planishing and what have you all around the panel to try and get all of these shapes to fit back together again. And that's why when you see the people that actually know what they're doing and they're actually good at this, and they're doing like a chop on something, they wind up basically remaking, you know, sometimes almost the entire roof, because they're trying to get that flow and that shape to all go back the way it is. And that's really the only proper way to do it. But for the rest of us, we've kind of got to make do with what we've got. So you'll see me do a lot of hammer on dolly and hammering and what have you, as well as using the shrinking disc over the kind of the surface that we're working. And all that is just kind of an effort to kind of blend all the shapes together again and try to make them look proper. Hopefully we end up with something that looks correct, but we always have to be considering the entire panel, you know, not just the area or the filler strip we put in, but we have to look at the entire panel as a whole and see how it's all kind of fitting together. Hopefully some of that made sense, because it's something that I certainly struggled with for a long time, or struggled to figure out. You know, I'd get my filler piece or whatever all perfectly made, and then I'd go and weld it in and hammer it back straight, and I think it was okay. Then I'd look at it and it, you know, it wouldn't quite look right or whatever, and then I'd have to go back and rework the entire panel to try and get the shape back into it. And that's just the way it is. You know, you cut up a circle like I showed here, and you try adding or subtracting from it, and it stops becoming the shape that it is. And so it's a lot more work than just cutting and welding pieces together, I guess. And I've noticed a lot of other folks have kind of struggled with that as well. You know, there's a lot of people out there widening and lengthening vehicles now, and you know, you end up with this kind of weird looking thing in the roof. And to be fair, you know, a lot of the times you can just end up, you know, filler will hide a lot, but in extreme cases, there's no amount of filler that will even make it look right at all. So it just depends on the panel and the shape you're trying to create. But again, that's why you see the guys who are actually good at this, they wind up just, you know, remaking the entire panel or remaking a large portion of the panel to actually get that to all flow together and look right again. But for the rest of us, we have to just do our best and fill the rest. I do try to put some thought into, you know, where I make my cuts and stuff when doing stuff like this. I try to put the cuts in strategic places where it's easier to kind of blend the shapes together again. But at the end of the day, there's no avoiding the fact that we completely screwed up the entire profile of this panel here. So there's going to be a lot of work to get it all to kind of look right again. So for kind of checking the highs and lows, I just use a regular old sanding block. Normally I use like 80 grit on here, but I don't have any, so this is like 220, but it doesn't really matter. All it's doing is just kind of showing us a rough idea of the shape of the panel and what needs to come up and what needs to come down. You also see me just spray on like some cheap like rattle can paint just to kind of see where things are at. If you're made of money, you can use Dykem, I guess. Another tool that we use here is called a bullseye pick. I know everybody always asks about this. I've got lots of videos explaining this, but people still ask. So this is basically just a tool for once you get the panel into the correct shape again. Because we're finishing stuff out by hand, there's going to be a lot of little kind of ripples and lumps and bumps and things. The purpose of this is just kind of an accurate way of bringing up those minor low spots, but it's also a pretty effective surface leveling tool because it almost acts as like a hammer off dolly, because we have this pushing down from the outside and this pushing up from the backside. So I find it actually works really good for leveling out those lumps. Like we're not just smashing it up or trying to, you know, dramatically move it. It's pushing the low spots up, and at the same time it's pushing down on those high spots. So like I said, it's the same as kind of the hammer off dolly technique, but just on a much smaller scale. So we don't want to use this until the panel is the correct shape again, but once it is the correct shape and we're just trying to remove those minor ripples, then it becomes a very effective tool for doing that. So that is the bullseye pick. You'll also see here when you buy these, they come with a very sharp point, and this is way too sharp. So what I did is I just ground one down so it's actually flat. Once you grind this down, it becomes much more effective and much more useful. I do still keep this sharper point around because once you get the panel right to the correct shape and it's smooth, but you still got like a few little spots like this, then it works quite good for that. but I don't even worry about stuff like this until right at the very end, and actually most of the time I don't even worry about this at all. But just if you want to get really fussy, that's where this is kind of handy. It also works if you got like some areas around the welds just for picking up that last little bit, but 99.99% of the time this is completely useless. So the very final step, I guess, once I have the panel as straight as I possibly can get it, with the hand tools that are available to me and the shrinking disc and whatever, then we switch over to the Vixen file. It's got kind of curved blades like this. There's a couple of different styles. This one has a hardwood handle, which is good for flatter crowns. And this one is adjustable, so it's better for high crowns. You can adjust the curve of it so it can either go this way, or if you're doing like a reverse curve, it can go this way. The purpose of this is basically just to kind of mark up the surface, and then any areas that are still low at that point, you knock them up, and once the file is touching, you know, the entire surface, then you know it's straight. It's kind of the final judge and jury. If you're just using the block and you're doing everything by hand, the block will only get it so straight. Like it's kind of like if you were trying to block sand, you know, body filler with 400 grit. What happens is, you know, the block just ends up kind of rocking on the high and lows and whatever. Whereas this tells you right away whether or not it's straight. It's very hard surface. It's flat and whatever. Sorry about the furnace noise in the background, but you're just gonna have to get used to it for the next couple months. Because winter has finally arrived in Saskatchewan and it is really cold out. So when I use this, it's just like if you're blocking a car. We go one direction and then we go the other direction, kind of at like a 30-degree angle to one another. Or as us professionals in the biz call it, the crisscross applesauce technique. If you just go in a straight line one way, or you try going like this, you'll end up just making a mess and it won't actually make the panel straight, or you won't get the panel straight. It is kind of a misunderstood tool because it's called a file. So, you know, people think that you're supposed to like knock up the areas so they're high and then file off those high spots to get it level. But that's not the way this works. It's basically just kind of like a guide code almost, where you're just scratching up the surface. If it does show up high, then you know right away, and then you tap down those high spots and you bring up the low spots and you're just trying to get it level. It just it's more accurate way of kind of gauging where you're at than using this. That being said, I use this just to get the panel roughed in. By the time this comes out, the panel should already be, you know, dialed in. The shape should be there. It should be pretty smooth already. And if we do all the initial steps right, then the actual final work with this is usually doesn't take very long at all. It's just kind of tuning in that last little bit. We don't want to just use this right away, because that's kind of the point where you start running the risk of actually removing material that you don't want to remove. So that's kind of how this works. I'm not going to say that this is the best way. It is definitely not the best way. You wouldn't ever use this on like a $1 million Pebble Beach car or whatever. This is old school. This is the way it was done, you know, in the early days of bodywork up until probably the 1960s and 1970s. I think it's still taught in autobody schools today, or at least it was when I was in school. For the junk I work on, it works just fine. Actually, I think if you go back a couple videos to our dent repair video, we actually found evidence of where this was used right from the factory. This is how they would remove, you know, imperfections or dings in panels before the vehicle got assembled, and pretty common to use in body shops as well back then. So, you know, if it was good enough for the old timers, then it's good enough for me. I'm not trying to build anything to any kind of high standard. So that's our explanation of this particular high-tech device. I don't know. I'm gonna call that good enough for now, I guess. If you look at the profile, the shapes are, I'm relatively pleased with how the shapes are kind of blending together. You can see we've evicted Shame Valley over here, and more importantly, the Mountain of Sorrow over here has been depleted, so that's good. Obviously, I haven't gotten into anything here yet, so this is all needing a ton of work through here. The idea here is just to get the roof framed out. So we'll finish out all these outer seams, I guess, to a certain stage. And then all we've got left is this to work. And then we know when we weld this and make a huge mess of it that all of the action that's happened from welding this is only from welding this, and we're not trying to work everything at once, because that gets frustrating and out of hand in a hurry. Finishing all of this right out at this stage was kind of a waste of energy. Because of the amount of work that's going to the rest of this, I could have just stopped when I had the shape and then worried about the rest of it later. I guess this was just for my own motivation, and also just proof of concept, you know, that welding a bunch of garbage together could be hammered out to look at least somewhat presentable. Again, this was all the wrong way of doing this, but at the end of the day, I guess it's done, so what's done is done. We can't really go back and fix it now. I'm relatively pleased with how the various shapes are kind of blended together here. Didn't really waste a lot of time with stuff like this area here, because we still have the drip rail that oh, can't do this with one hand. Hold on here. See, we still got the drip rail to go on there, so that would be kind of a waste of energy, I think, to get too carried away with that. I don't know. The camera's not really wanting to cooperate with us, but oh, just focus, would you please, for like 30 seconds. That's all I need. But when I first put this together, I didn't think things weren't looking too good with getting these shapes back. It just didn't seem like it was gonna jive, or we were gonna have some issues. But at least this small area seems to have worked out, and definitely using the shrinking disc to kind of blend it all together definitely helped out a lot. So I guess it is what it is. A lot of work left to do on this seam, though. I'm not looking forward to that. The problem with all this is we've kind of set a standard that we have to finish the rest of this out to, which is more or less impossible. So I don't know. Again, nothing is ever perfect, but I don't know. We're just having fun here. I just kind of try to push ourselves to do a little better every time, and eventually maybe we'll actually get good at this. But you also see, I guess, all of our rust pitting, you know, that was in this is still all present and accounted for. So we didn't really do any damage by using the vixen file on this that wasn't already there. Can't do anything about the rust pitting. It's just, well, we could have started with a truck that wasn't garbage, I guess, but that's just the way it goes. It's just part of the truck now. Now I get to repeat the same thing over here. If I was a real entrepreneurial YouTuber, I would probably just do this side where I built, you know, the entire piece in one section, and then welded it in so we only had the one seam there, and then we could do a nice little comparison and stuff. But because I'm a total butcher, I'm just going to do it exactly the same as I did the other side and just make it out of multiple pieces of garbage welded together. The only difference, I think, is just to make things a little easier. I think I'm just going to bust this piece loose. There's only a couple tack welds here holding it. Bust it loose, weld the filler pieces on separately, and then go and join it all in to the roof after, just to make it a little easier for, I guess, hammering things back into shape. I'm probably going to do most of that off camera just because it's the exact same as the other side. And then we'll also we'll do some video on finishing this center seam here. It's just tack welded right now, so we'll get that dialed in and probably do these as well. These seams here have to be welded and finished out, and once that's done, then we can tackle the elephant in the room, which is this center of the roof. That's going to be the hardest part to do, and we'll see how that turns out. I almost forgot to do an oil can update here for you all. Let's see how it's tightened up here. Seems pretty good. Yeah. Roof seems pretty tight as it is right now. I know some of you in the comments in the last video were talking about having to add like braces to the roof and stuff like that. These turret top style roofs, they never had any bracing from the bottom from factory. There's a lot of strength in this roof from factory. So if we do our job right with the rest of this roof, there's no need to add any bracing to it. It'll all be quite strong as it is. If we screw this up, then we'll have to add a brace. Anyways, this is just kind of a brief overview of what we had to do to get these panels in here and welded and hammered out and whatever. I've got several videos that cover this kind of thing in more detail already. This is just, all it is repetition. There's no skill involved in any of this. There's no talent. It's literally just repetition and patience. So that's all the secret, I guess, is just keep at it, and hopefully we can say the same for when we screw up the center of this roof. We'll probably cover that in a little bit more detail because it's going to be quite an involved job to weld a seam this long through the center of a roof and have it actually look like something when we're done. So thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks to all our supporters who have been sending in donations on the super thanks and super chats and through PayPal, as well as our monthly supporters over on Patreon. You folks are all responsible for me being able to make these videos for you. So thank you, and we'll see you again soon.